First off, I sent out the results last week about the league match, and we've had confirmation that we've finished runners up in the league. So we're getting promoted to League 5, which will be good.
Oh, it's
So
really good.
That's good. Yeah. Yeah. Really happy with that. So well done, everybody. And I suspect we were probably the only club that had 8 different photographers. So that there was only, because all the other teams in our league, you can have up to 2 each from each person. Everybody had more than one in, but not us. We had 8 singles, so that was really good. So shared it about, and the scores.
I think that should be a rule, you know.
Yeah, wouldn't be a bad idea, would it? It was really good.
No,
but nobody.
It becomes difficult for the smaller clubs to get sufficient input if they're kind of around about the 10 dozen people to participate in the competitions.
Yes. The reason I'm laughing, Colin, is last week you were in the middle of the frame. Now you're on the edge of the frame, and next week are you going to be out the door and shouting from there?
I'm just waiting for the glass of wine to be delivered. You watch. It'll come up in a minute.
Well, I wish you were my husband. I'd knock that snug face off of you.
Yeah, cheers to you as well, yeah.
Says me with mine. You just brought me in some tea,
I think mine's better than yours.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah.
Each photo had an average score of over 8, which is pretty good going.
That was good.
Mike's Derwentwater was 8.11. Keith's Flying Scotsman was 8.17. Dennis Back, who brought us home with his 10 last week, had an average score of 8.39. Trudy's Fox Cub was 8.44. My Mogshade was 8.5. Terry's Flower was 8.22. Dave's Yachts was 8.72. And the highest average score, and he had a total of 80 over the rounds. Gary's Portland Lighthouse was 8.89. So that was really good going.
Very good, yeah.
Yeah, so we finished second in the league behind. We had 62 points. Storrington were first with 68, so we caught them up on that last round. And the next team, Alton, were 7 points behind us. So
bottom line is, Pete, I looked at 3 clubs before I joined this one, and I couldn't care less where we are in the league. I know it's nice, but
yeah, thanks.
How many of them get out in the forest like we did last week? And had a pleasant evening.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's what we want to do, isn't it? Bit of everything.
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah.
We keep going during the summer.
Yeah. We had a nice night out last Tuesday, but
I think that's why some clubs, as you say, they put in 2 or 3 from each member, and they're very secretive clubs. Those members keep it to themselves and probably don't tell the others how to do things and all the rest of it. So I agree with Dave on that.
We
gave up all that crap when I was at work. That's one of the joys of retirement. Don't have to put up with all that claptrap, do you?
No. All the bad things about Photoshop and all that, we like to pass and share them on.
Yeah.
All the bad habits and all the wrong ways to do things.
Luckily enough, my memory is really bad, so I can't remember any of them, good or bad.
Right. So what we were going to do tonight was just to have I've got a couple of videos to show. I just wanted, one thing I've always struggled with, as I said, is I'm colourblind, is let me just share the screen. Is colour and how to use it. And I don't know, I'm sure all of you have seen like the colour wheel before, and how you have the opposite colours opposite each other are complementary. It's something that to a degree has passed me by a bit. So what we got is a couple of videos, one going through some examples. It's from the National Geographic that I showed before. And after that, we've got a little short presentation on how you can use Photoshop and the color wheel and changing colors. So we'll just set off. I won't mute anybody tonight, but we'll have a chat about the videos after them. Hopefully you can see the screen okay.
Can't hear anything.
What do you want to do?
Oh, wait a minute. Haven't got the sound, have you?
No,
No.
no sound.
No, I know. Me, I forgot to change the setting again.
Have you blown it again?
Well, sort of. Wait a minute.
Is it the same guy as last time?
No,
What, the bloke who forgot to put the sound on, you mean?
that's the same bloke. Yes. Da, 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 da. 1 minute.
Just can't get the staff these days.
No, I know.
No, places full of
Don't you have to start again, Peter? And check
Yeah, I
the
think I
box
do. I've got
on
to
share
start.
screen?
Yeah, let me share again.
What are you doing, Roy?
Sorry?
What are you doing, Roy?
Well, I just shut my door and turned the big light on and picked up a couple of bits off the floor.
No, I thought you were taking up a bit of praying there. You know, in the hope that we'd get some sound.
Yeah.
Da, 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 da. No, why isn't it on there this time? Just a sec.
Isn't it the share screen thing where you pick the screen? Doesn't it share sound at the bottom left-hand corner?
Yeah, it should be on there, shouldn't it? 1 minute.
And one called Optimize for video clip. I hadn't really noticed
For
before.
the
but-
new members amongst us, they noticed we're really tuned in to how to
Yeah.
operate this.
In all fairness, we've only been doing it a year, haven't we?
Yeah, precisely. You know, takes a while to get the knack of it all.
Well, we've done it before. It just takes a while to remember it. doesn't it?
What are you talking about? Oh dear.
It's all those little grey cells, you see.
Ah.
I've read that beer's good for them. Our leader's gone very quiet.
Yeah, just talk amongst yourselves.
Harry, we heard anything from the parish council about the opening of the centre?
No, I was thinking about sending them an email to see what the latest situation is there. I should get a response from them. It's gone very quiet on that front.
Yeah, they were quite on top of it once before, weren't they?
Yeah. Yeah, I'll send them an email.
They're probably all giving injections to people.
Could
Well,
well
I've got a
be.
meeting on the 20th of, I think it's the 20th of April, where I'm presenting apprenticeships. And they've not come back and said that it's going to be closed.
So either from the news that the injections have plummeted today and over the weekend.
Okay, I think I got it now, guys.
Right, okay,
Let
go
me
for
know.
it.
Someone shout if you can't hear.
Yeah.
Got the music.
That's good.
Lovely, lovely.
Thank goodness for that.
Hello, my name is Annie Griffiths, and I've been a photographer at National Geographic for over 30 years. Like most of the photographers at National Geographic, I started out in newspapers. And there wasn't much color used in newspapers in those days, so we shot primarily in black and white. A funny thing happened when we put color film in the camera, even as veterans. I think we tended to think that we had to go out and look for hot air balloons. But the truth is there's a lot to know about color, and we're going to talk about that today so that you can be a more accomplished color photographer. We all know that the light in the morning and in the evening is really colorful, especially if it's been dusty or after a storm. And that's because the atmosphere actually comes through the dust or through the water in the sky, and it refracts and it creates colors. So dust will tend to create oranges, and water will tend to create more pinks and purples. It's a great time to shoot, but we want to be thinking about how we're going to shoot, how we're going to use those colors in the sky. And so we'll talk a lot about that today. One way you can do is shoot right into the sun and let things go into silhouette. That's really fun when you have something that can be defined by the color and by the light, such as this picture. Here, you know, the silhouette of the elephants is so clean and readable, and we all know that elephant shape. So by shooting right into the sun, we're going to get a deep, deep red, and we can let the colors of the elephant just completely turn to silhouette. A lot of times, if you have a recognizable shape, you can actually underexpose to get that color to go richer and richer and richer. Here, also backlit, we have sunrise coming through the trees. And what you'll see, and it's really quite fun, is that as the sun rises, the colors change, or as the sun sets, the colors change. And by adjusting your exposure and trying things at either end of correct exposure or underexposure, you can play with those colors and make them richer. It's really all about choosing your palette. And I think we all grew up with the color wheel that showed the primary colors and what we, what we see as complementary or clashing colors. When you have in your image colors from either end of these spectrums, you're going to get a powerful, powerful burst of color. So for example, in this picture, you know, we're really seeing lots of different, very primary colors. And by making sure that nothing competes with those primary colors, that you're really careful in your composition, what you keep out can be as important as what you keep in the photograph. You don't want anything to distract from that palette you've chosen. This is a perfect example of something we see all the time, but we don't always analyze. Here, what we have is a sunrise in Sydney. And the color of the sunrise is really gorgeous. It's a vivid, vivid oranges. But by keeping that as part of the image and then letting the rest of the image become this vivid blue, the orange pops and the blue pops. And that's where you get a dramatic color image. The very same thing is happening in this image. We're putting a very vivid color against an opposite color in the spectrum. So here, these are monarch butterflies. We know that they're bright orange. And by getting low and putting that orange creature against a very vivid blue sky, the colors will pop. And they'll each sort of have more intensity. Here's another example of a beautiful scene. And, you know, if she'd had on a blue bathing suit, it would have been okay. But because she had on a yellow swimming suit, I got very, very low in the water beside her because I knew that yellow would make all the blues pop in this image. And that's really what we're going for. We want to plan where we place color in an image as much as possible. Within that spectrum of colors, there are hues that are softer. And I particularly like to work with those softer colors within an image. It creates another kind of palette that often is a little more elegant. So, for example, in a picture as simple as this, which is just grasses blowing, the fact that there are these soft pinks and kind of soft oranges within that frame makes the whole picture feel differently. It feels elegant. It's got those soft contrasting colors. And, you know, nothing else is distracting. Again, what you keep out is as important as what you leave in. Some of the most beautiful colors can be found before the sun rises and after the sun sets. And we'll talk a lot about that today because I think you can get the glory of the bright sunset and sunrise, but you can get the softness and the elegant colors before and after that sunrise or sunset. It's also important to know that you can frame a picture with color. So in this picture, for example, the fact that I kind of cut the picture off here with this blue and wrapped the subject in blue makes the photograph a little bit stronger. It really contains the subject in a blue palette. Sometimes the only way you can really limit your palette is by getting very, very close. And it's a lot of fun. So in this image, for example, this opera star was putting on her makeup and there were tons of distracting things around. But by getting very, very tight and focusing just on her face and letting only this pop of blue come in the background, you stay contained in that image and the color palette is complementary and quite beautiful. Different colors have different personalities, and it's really fun to get to know that. This is a very simple picture of a fern in deep shade in the morning, and it's got frost on it. You'll be surprised. This is not photoshopped. You'll be just amazed at how much blue there is in shade, and you can use it to your advantage. Again, by only picking a composition within that color palette, and it just makes you shiver, and that's what we're going for. So learning to understand the feeling colors will give people, that's in our brains, that we react to different colors dramatically differently, will help you know how to deliver information simply with the color. So here, these are dolphins in New Zealand, and I was leaning over this little raft and really trying to put emphasis on the fact that they're in the water, that I wanted to feel like I was in the water with them. So I got as close as I could, and you can see that early light and the blue is even washing over the dolphins, who are actually gray. But in this picture, it's all about blue. It's like entering their world. Another example, this is actually a little island forming along the Great Barrier Reef. They call them sand keys. And here I'm shooting from an airplane, but even so, I'm being careful about the color combinations that are going to make this dramatic. There's the sweep of the sand forming, but then there's also sweeps of blue surrounding it and different layers of it. So I shot it many different ways, but always core to this image was letting that sweep of colors, contrasting colors, lead the image. Here's another look, very same sand bar emerging, but here you can see there's no sky. And so it becomes almost abstract. You see the coral reef of the Barrier Reef, and you see this sweep of white or kind of tan, and it's completely contained in the blue. So there are different ways to use color to deliver a different view of a subject, of the same subject. Blue can also be very calming, very cooling. And in this picture of the Taj Mahal, I wanted to work with the reflection in the water and use it as the palette that would frame what was happening. The Taj itself is so elegant. It's got such a muted palette. And instead of seeing the visitors as a distraction in the image, I figured out a way to use the blue of the pool and put everybody and everything in the water. Then there are reds, and reds are, they elicit such a strong response from people. Red is passion, red is power, red is fire. And in this particular image, I was shooting the Millennium fireworks in Sydney Harbor. And of course, I shot lots of different color fireworks, but the shot that ended up on the cover of the magazine was this one. And I think it's because we wanted to give that feeling, that Sydney was a country that was really coming into its own at the turn of the millennium. They were about to host the Olympics, and we wanted a powerful punch of red. Here, you can, again, you can see the energy of these dancers in Mexico. And, you know, red is a color that's fun to play with a slower exposure and let it move, let the colors move and be imperfect and blended. And I did that in this image, and it was great fun. Other times, red can be sort of a, you know, a unifying theme, but you really often want to put in a contrasting, anchoring color, such as these white flowers. And what it does is it keeps the red from just turning into kind of mush. You have a place that you start from, and then you go into the reds throughout the scene, and eventually to the red of the sunset. It draws you in. There are also times when just a little pop of color will kind of complete an image. And, you know, I have this happen a lot where I'll realize it's almost a picture, but it's only when a little pop of color comes into the scene that you get a kind of a complete image. And in here, this is a very, very, you know, limited palette. It's a beautiful time of day. It's orange and beautiful light. But there's something about the red of his keffiyeh that, for me, completes the image. That little piece of color makes the image stronger. And in a situation like this, when it happens in front of your camera, you're just like, oh, fabulous. I just hope I don't mess it up. Now, there are a couple of colors that are often neglected when we talk about color photography. And those two colors are black and white. They are legitimate colors, and I think it's so important for us to remember that they too can set a mood. Old black and white photography, I think, set a standard for credibility. So photographers will often choose black and white photography if they're covering a more serious subject, because it has a more serious feel. But within all of these blacks and whites are tonalities. And from those tonalities, we can learn a lot about tonalities in other colors. Black and white is, can be moody, can be frightening. And when you're working in color, you can use those very same features of black and of white to add that mood to your color. So this is actually a color photograph, and yet it's completely black and white. We really, you know, see the spider web because of this. It's that deep black that makes the web burst off the background. This too is a color photograph. And you can see that the grays and all of the colors within there are very limited. Now there's a little bit of green peeking in up here and a little bit of green down here, but basically it's a black and white photograph. And it's spookier than if I had photographed with a lot of other colors interfering. You get that, you go, yikes, that's a crocodile. So on the opposite side of the spectrum, white and the use of white can be very elegant, can be very soft, kind of can evoke innocence and stillness and beauty, as in this photograph. It's a very simple photograph, but that black and white feel, and it's on color film, all of these are on color film, and these soft little shadows are what makes the picture feel complete. In other situations, the neat thing about black and white is it won't distract from a point you're trying to make by having lots of competing colors. So in this, the goal was to show that women were part of the graduating class at Annapolis. Her little blonde hair jumps out a lot more because there's no other color in this photograph. So, you know, with all colors, black and white included, you want to really consider what is the mood you're trying to convey? What is the feeling you're trying to convey? This is a silly picture, but it's the fact that they're in these white tutus and you know, everything about it is hilarious. These guys had dressed up their boat for a special day in Sydney Harbor, and they dressed their boat up as Swan Lake. But as the day progressed, I was watching them, and sure enough, eventually their inner ballerina came out, and you can see their legs crossed and their toes curled, and that kind of completed the image. But it's the surrounding of white that makes it even funnier and cuter. White can also be a color that anchors a photograph, or black can be. So this is a very simple picture, but look how that white hat and the shape of it takes you up to the Sydney Opera House. And you know, when you take this picture apart, it's really pretty much white and some blue, but it sends you where you want to go. White can also evoke purity or innocence, as in this photograph. By getting up high and shooting down on the mother and baby, I was able to just let them be wrapped in the white of the sheets. And it just adds to that purity and that simplicity that you want with a Madonna kind of picture. Another thing that's important to know is that bad weather makes great pictures. And looking for the moodiness of a sky or a storm that's approaching, and shooting it very simply, as this shot is in pretty much black and white, but you definitely get that spooky feeling. There are other situations where there isn't a lot of color, and it still can be beautiful. Now, this picture was shot at sunset, so the light is quite lovely, but you can see there aren't a lot of, you know, colorful objects in there, and that's just fine. That's the palette of the desert. That's the mood you want to convey. Here too, you know, yes, it's pretty light. It defines the color of the dunes, especially side light will make all these little dune lines really lead you through the image, but it's very limited colors. Other times that limited color can be kind of ignited by a pop of color, as in this picture, where the orange of her sari is what sets off and kind of complements the blue behind her and the whole scene. If you want the focus of an image to be a person's expression, a moment in time, sometimes you want the palette of that image to be very, very simple. For example, in this image, the woman's reaction to the little girl who brought her flowers, this whole reaction really jumps, in part because we're very close to her, but also in part because nothing is competing. Even the soft colors of these flowers, you know, are part of this palette. Now, just to the right of her over here was a bright red shirt on a clothing line. And choosing to eliminate that distracting item helps you stay on the emotion of the image and the person. Exact same thing here. You know, really limiting anything that will distract from a beautiful moment in a photograph is a smart choice. This is on the Burmese border, and you know, just that interaction between the mom and the baby, nothing is taken away from that. And here, I actually had to get down really, really low to get this picture and keep everything else out. I just wanted the viewer to feel like you were a kid there too, and that you were down among these kids, and I didn't want bright sky or any other thing to distract from that. As I said, bad weather makes great pictures. And in part, it's the colors that only happen during certain weather that can set a mood. Now here it's just ice. It's just ice, white ice. And there is a little bit of color back in this area, but you look at this picture and you feel cold, and it's fun to try to isolate those things. Here is another example of a big actual tornado building in the sky. And you know, by keeping the horizon low and letting the color and the drama of that sky really be the subject rather than the Badlands, you feel like you're there and you're witnessing a tornado forming. And you are, because this turned into a devastating tornado. It can also, you know, the weather itself can also take you to an intimate place. You know, a blizzard has a whole different feeling than a soft snowfall. And in this picture, the fact that this man is with his horse and you can see the snow on his hat, and this falling snow creates a softened palette that allows their relationship to feel a little bit more intimate. Here, the snow was blowing really hard. And because a bison's shape is so familiar, I just focused on the snow itself and did a slower shutter speed and let the snow work to give a feeling of the power of that animal in a blizzard. This too is a blizzard. And what happens, I think, with the color here is the blizzard is blowing so hard that the white is actually washing out the red of the barn. So we all know it's a red barn. Barns are red, but the fact that even that red barn has been muted can often be what helps us realize, oh my gosh, this is really a bad storm. And it was in fact 60 below zero when I took this picture. Again, bad weather can be a great picture, you know, work with it, work with whatever you're given. And in this situation, it was a terrible day in New Zealand, but I started shooting things through the window. And here, this little pop of color that this man was wearing really, you know, created the perfect through the scene. And you empathize with him. You know, you're looking through the rain, so you know.
Whoever's on the phone
there in
call, can they
nasty
mute
weather.
themselves, please?
There are other scenes that are really not that interesting, and just a little bit of color can help those scenes. So this is such a scene. This is in Melbourne, Australia, and this little balloon flew by, thank heaven, because the sky was dull, the whole scene was really quite gray, and yet just that little balloon, and waiting for it to get where you want it. You know, if you've got color floating through a scene, or if you have the ability to compose, you want to wait till it's in a place that it'll help the picture overall, such as this big empty patch of green. Color and children go together. You know, playing with the colors of a child's life and playing with the wonder in a child's life can be a lot of fun. And here, these little boys in Panama were playing with frogs, and you know, it's their body language in red, but again, tight on his face, that, you know, really makes you smile. Here, her vivid, you know, red outfit against the sky makes you feel joyful. It's literally a fashion shoot. But sometimes when we can just add a little bit of color and motion, it makes the photograph feel alive. Here too, pretty dull, except for the colors in here. You know, I'm photographing a resort, not very exciting, but when this woman walked out in her yellow flippers and her green dress, boom, all of a sudden it's a photograph that's fun. Here, this picture illustrates something kind of interesting because a pop of color can draw your eye to something that you might miss. So in this photograph, which is all blue and white, this red draws you to this single figure walking out. The interesting thing is it takes you a while to get to this guy because he doesn't have the red around him. So color can draw your eye to a subject that you might kind of not see otherwise. Color can also lead you through an image. It can be like your leading line through an image. And in the case of this photograph, the red of these keffiyehs take you to all the people in the picture. It's like almost like water, a little river of color that pulls the picture together. Kind of the same thing here, because these reds that come throughout the picture become sort of a leading line that embraces the very simple palette of black and white in the rest of the image. Now, something that's really fun is to find a location where you love the color palette so much, or you love the play of shapes, that you think, I wish something was happening. Just wait. This is one of those examples. I was at a restaurant in Mexico, a little cafe, and I loved the light and the colors and the little things on the wall. And so I waited, and eventually this man walked by. Completely different image. You know, but this is something that Cartier-Bresson did a lot. He'd find a setting he liked and he'd wait for something and kind of believe that something would happen, and then he'd catch that moment. Another example, I'd seen this wonderful row of houses in Cape Town, South Africa, but there was usually a lot of traffic and cars and things, so I went early on a Sunday morning and parked myself, framed it all up, and hoped that something would happen. And sure enough, first of all, this guy came out on his balcony, and it was pretty good. And wonderfully, there was only one car on the street, and it was this beautiful old car. But then this woman walked up to cross the street, and boom, then it's a picture that's much more interesting. And for some reason, she was wearing yellow. Could have kissed her. Another situation where I just loved the colors. This is in Argentina, and I loved the colors on this wall with this parrot hanging, and I just stayed there, and people went up and down the stairs. But eventually, when this woman came down and then her dog was trying to get past her legs, boom, much more interesting photograph. This is really a very similar thing. I mean, what a simple scene, but I loved the graphics of it. Now, the people outside didn't even know I was inside this tent. And so various things happened in this doorway, but this is the image that I ended up liking the best because this woman was just motioning to a friend, and the graphics really framed her emotions. Exact same thing. Beautiful scene. Park yourself there, wait for something to happen, believe that something will happen, and it usually does. Another thing that we look for, even in wildlife photography, but certainly in photography in general, is to shoot it and hope that something is going to happen. And sometimes what happens is it gets better because of a little piece of color. This is a perfect example. I was photographing this bird. It's a perfectly nice image, but I kept with it, and eventually the bird called. And it's that burst of yellow from its beak and that expression that makes this a much stronger image than the one before it. Another thing that's really fun to do is if you see something that's kind of cool during the daytime, go back before the sun rises, go back later, but especially if you know it's going to be lit at night. So I had fun photographing Luna Park, and this picture's fun, but look what happens when the lights come on. Whole different image. You know, you're just completely drawn into this face in a way that was okay before, but really kind of magical now. It's the colors. I'm going to finish with a day in my life where I had been sent to photograph this picture, and I did my homework and I did exactly what I was supposed to and found out when the traffic was going to be on the Mississippi River in front of the arch, and I took it, but I just felt kind of empty. So afterwards I had some time on my hand, and what I really loved was the arch. So I just said, I'm going back to the basics. I'm going to go down and photograph that arch. And I did. And so this is just a series of pictures that I did for myself. No particular reason for them, certainly not an assignment, but by following the light and the color of the light through the day, I was able to find a little story of the arch in a couple of hours. And I encourage all of you to try this with something that you're drawn to. Stay with it, stay with it. Eventually a plane flew by, and this is sort of late afternoon, and the arch was glowing. And then the light got softer and softer. And as it got soft, there were different compositions that presented themselves by letting the color of the light lead the whole photograph. Eventually, the sun went down, the moon came up, and I just stayed with it. And look at the different colors as we've gone from daylight to twilight, which is some of the most beautiful color there is. This was the last picture of the day, and it's absolutely at twilight. Ooh. I just laid on my belly and made a tripod out of my camera bag and captured the colors. And that's what I hope all of you will do, is follow the light, follow the colors of the day, and figure out where your composition is within that palette at that time in your shooting.
That was good.
Very good.
Very good, thanks.
Yeah, did you enjoy that? Did that give you some ideas? And
Yeah.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah, that was absolutely fabulous. I loved the way she had those compositions, and I just thought it was wonderful. But a question, I mean, where she had, for example, in the last one she did with the bridge. I mean, again, how if you've got these competing colours, what would you focus on to set your speed and shutter? Which part of the picture would you choose to focus on?
Some of those pictures are taken with a wide angle lens, I think, and the depth of field of a wide angle lens is very great.
Okay.
So you get really close, you can get close to the arch so it looks enormous, because the wide angle lens just makes things that are close to the camera look big and things that are further away look small. It distorts, but it has this great depth of field, so everything will be in focus if you set a narrow enough aperture.
So a narrow aperture will pick up. Okay.
Yeah, and it probably doesn't need to be that narrow if you have a very wide angle lens.
Okay, thank you.
yeah, and obviously, if you've got something like that, and you're looking for a particular photo, then take 3 or 4 different settings. Like we were saying last week, it's not like when it was filmed, you had to be mindful of how much it was going to cost you to develop everything. With digital, you can just click away.
Just away, yeah.
And then just get as many options and many different settings as you can, really. And then sort of look at them afterwards. Anybody else had any thoughts on what they saw?
Oh, it's very good, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I saw a video today on features that draw the eye in a photograph, that, so your eye is drawn to a particular spot. One of them obviously was color and saturation, which is this theme. Other ones were brightness, contrast, and sharpness. So the video simply had a portrait of a woman with a messy background. It made them into 2 layers, made a selection of the woman and a selection of the background, and it applied the opposite of saturation, contrast, exposure, and sharpness. And gosh, the different, and also the color that was talked about for mood. So white balance was applied, and your eye was drawn if she looked warm, and the background, and it was less noticeable if she was cool. It's really a good illustration of how you can draw the eye.
Yeah, I think it gets you, seeing that video gets you thinking about what you're doing and how the colors affect, like she said, the mood of the picture, isn't it? And what you're trying to achieve. But where are we? So I've also got a little short video off of YouTube, which is shows you how to use some of this what we've just sort of discussed there in Photoshop if you want to change some colors using the color wheel. So I'll just share that and play that if I can find it. Okay.
No, it's Flern.
Create and use complementary colors in Photoshop. Hey guys, and welcome to Flern. My name is Aaron Nace, and you can find me on flern.com, where we make learning Photoshop and photography fun. And today's episode is going to be great because you can use this on any one of your images. We're going to show you a quick and easy way you can actually create complementary colors in Photoshop. Basically, complementary colors are 2 colors at the opposite sides of the color wheel that always look good together. And in this example, we're going to be changing the background color. We've just got a wall behind our subject. We're going to change it to actually match the clothing she's wearing in the photo. We got a great episode, guys. Let's go ahead and jump into Photoshop. Okay, guys, here's our image for today. Now, we're going to be using complementary colors. So I want to take the color of her hat, and I want to choose a complementary color for her background. And I don't want to guess here. I want to make sure that I'm actually choosing the complementary color that is perfectly the complement to the hat. So what we're going to do, we're first going to load up our Adobe color theme. So I'm going to go to Window, and we're going to go to Extensions and down to Adobe Color Theme. Now, this is a really cool dialog because you can use your Adobe color themes to create all kinds of different themes, including analogous colors, monochromatic, triad, complementary, compound, shades, and custom. So let's go ahead and start off here with analogous. There we go. And basically what this is going to do, if I use my slider here, you can change the colors. There we go. And it's going to give you a different color range that has relatively similar colors. So let's say we had this green color. Okay, it's going to give us analogous colors that are similar on the color wheel. Okay, now in this case, we don't need a green color. We actually want to choose the color of our hat. So what we're going to do is I'm going to grab my eyedropper tool. So let's go ahead right over here and click on our eyedropper tool. Now you can click on any color in your image. Okay, I can select the white. I can select your hat color. Now, what I want to do here, instead of going to, right now it's going to select a point sample, which is just one tiny little point, right? And as I move my cursor around, you can see the color is changing quite a bit. So I want to increase my sample size. We're going to go over here to, instead of point sample, we're going to go to 31 by 31. Now, if I click right here, it's going to take an average of the colors, 31 pixels right around where I'm clicking, and it's going to average those together. So we'll get a much better representation of the color of the hat. Okay. So we've used our eyedropper, okay, that's putting the color right here as our active color. Now we need to figure out how we get this active color into my Adobe color theme. Okay, well there are a few different options right here on the bottom. We're going to go to this middle option that says Set Selected Color from Active Color. So let's go ahead and click there. And instantly you're going to see it's going to load this color right over here to my central color, which is the same color as our hat. So now we have all kinds of really cool color themes that we can use that are going to be similar to the color of our subject's hat. So let's go ahead and change through our different color themes. We have analogous. Let's click on monochromatic. It's just light and darker and more saturated versions of the same hue. Okay, we have a triad of colors. In this case, all three of these colors are going to look great together. And we're going to stop here on complementary, which is what we're going to be teaching you today. Complementary colors are on the opposite sides of the color wheel, and they're always going to look good together. Okay, so what we have now, this is actually really cool because we have the color of her hat, and now I have, these are different shades of a complementary color that we can use to color the background. So this is a big deal. Basically, we've totally calculated our complementary colors. So I don't have to think about it. I don't have to guess. I know the exact color that I want my background to be. So now all we have to do is figure out how do we change the background to this color. Well, I'll show you how to do it. So when it comes to color, you can analyze color in a bunch of different ways. And that's what these values down here are doing. They're analyzing this color in a bunch of ways. So we have CMYK, which you've probably heard of, cyan, magenta, yellow, and K for Kodachrome or black. Okay, we have RGB, red, green, and blue, LAB, okay, for our lightness A and B color. And here we have HSB, which stands for hue, saturation, and brightness. And here we have a hex code. Now, all of this information here is in the Adobe color theme. If I click here on my actual active color, let's click there. Okay, here you've seen this color picker. You've probably seen this before, right? Now, we have the same values here on the side. So we're clicking on this color, and it tells us all of the number values that make up that color. So let's go ahead and we'll just go to like a pink, and I'm going to try to plug in this color just with these numbers. Okay, so my color value. Let's go to this HSB. This is the one that I suggest using. So HSB, we have H is hue, okay, and that's at 11. So let's go ahead and type 11 right there. Okay, S is saturation, and that's 72. So I'm going to type in 72. All right, and B for brightness is 67. So we're going to type in 67. All right, and check that out. We have the exact same color as right there. So now let's say we clicked on this color here. All right, let's hit cancel real quick. We click on this color here. Now we can choose to use the hue, saturation, and brightness from this color as well. So really powerful. Now, we can set this color on our background in a couple of different ways. All right, the first way we're going to show you, I'm going to switch our colors out. So we're going to use this little icon to switch our foreground and background colors. And now we're going to go over to this leftmost object that says click to set active color. So let's go ahead and click there. So now we've got our complementary colors as our foreground and background colors, which is very cool. So we have a couple of different ways that I would recommend changing the background. The first way you could do it, if you have your color that you actually want set to your foreground color like we do here. Okay, we're going to go to Layer, down to New Adjustment Layer, and I'm going to go over to a solid color. Sorry, it's New Fill Layer, and we're going to go to Solid Color. All right, and hit OK. Now, when I load a solid color, it's going to automatically load the same exact color that's here on my foreground color. So let's hit OK there. Now, I can change this layer from normal down to color, and it's going to automatically color my image exactly that color. So it's coloring the entire image with this exact color. So that's one way you can do it. Now, we're going to use layer masks in a second. I know it's covering everything right now. We only want this to be visible in our background, so we'll use a layer mask in just a minute to make sure that that actually does the right job. Okay, so the first way is using a color fill by actually using this color. Okay, the next way I would suggest doing this is we're going to go to Layer, down to New Adjustment Layer, and I'm going to go to Hue Saturation. And here we can choose the hue and saturation of our image. Now, in this case, I know the color that I want. So I want to click on this Colorize button. So we're going to click on Colorize. And here, let's just start off right over there. I'm going to click on the color. It's the complementary color of our subject's hat. And we're going to see this is 159. So all I really have to do is match this hue. So 159. There we go. And we're matching the hue. And then I can change the saturation if I want. When it comes to complementary colors, really most of what you want it to look at is your hue. Okay, so either way you want to do it, you can just type in the hue value of 159 that you're going to get from here, or you can use a color fill layer. All right, let's go ahead and close that out, and we can see now we have two different ways. You can see this way is much more saturated than this other way, so you can kind of choose which color you'd like. And you can always go in here and increase saturation if you'd like, but if you go too far, you're going to start to get, it just doesn't look very natural, right? So I would recommend don't increase your saturation too far. It really doesn't look that great. Okay, so we've got two different layers that are coloring our image. Now, all I have to do is figure out a way to have them only show up on the wall because we don't want them to show up on our subject. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to use Select Color Range. We're going to select the color of the background, and we're going to load that as a layer mask, making these green layers only visible on our background. So for now, we're done with our Adobe color theme. I'm going to go ahead and close that out. Okay, I'm going to create a new layer, and we're going to go to Select and down to Color Range. So I'm going to select the color range of my background. So let's go ahead and click here on our background. Now you can click on her hat, and you can see it's selecting the color range of her hat and her skirt. Okay, or you can click on your background, and it's going to start selecting that out. Now, I'm going to hit this plus icon. So we have our regular eyedropper and our plus eyedropper, and this is just going to select a little bit more. There we go. Make sure we are actually selecting out our background. Now I can change my fuzziness to make sure it's not going to select much of what's going on here on my subject's shirt. Now, it's not perfect because, again, I'm selecting just the color of the background, and a little bit of the color is in her shirt as well. So you want to find a pretty good balance between your background and your subject. In this case, it's pretty good. So let's hit OK. And basically, what we see now is my background is selected. Okay, so we have a selection active. We have both of these layers that are going to color my selection. We just need to figure out how to get this selection onto the layer mask of one of these layers. Okay, it's really easy to do. So with our selection active, we're just going to click on our layer mask. All right, we're going to start here, and I'm going to hit Control or Command I to invert our layer mask just where it is selected. So let's hit Control or Command I. There we go, and that inverts. You can also go to Select and then down to Inverse. There we go. Now, let's deselect because you can see it actually gave the opposite of what we want because we selected the background. So I'm going to deselect by hitting Control or Command D. And now I'm going to hit Control or Command I again to invert that again. So we have just that color here coloring the background of our image. So this is just a way to use a layer mask. Now in this case, it's not perfect. So what we're going to do is I'm going to use my brush tool and I'm just going to paint white with my brush tool right over here on the background, just to make sure that we are going to be coloring all the colors here on our background. There we go. And let's go ahead and fill this in where we have a little bit of the hair. All right. Cool. Looking good. So now you can see we've colored the background with that color. And let's just change our background to medium gray. If I want the exact same layer mask on this other layer, all I have to do is hold down Alt or Option and click and drag the layer mask from one layer to another one. So hold Alt or Option, click and drag. You can see a little preview there. And when I let go, it's now going to copy it to the exact same. So layer mask here is the same as here. So if I make this visible and invisible, we can see both of these methods, the hue saturation method, where we typed in our hue of 159, and our color fill layer, where we had our foreground color when we created our color fill. Now, I personally like the hue saturation method more because we have more control. If I just double click right here, I can change my saturation at any point in time as well. Getting something, originally the image wasn't very saturated. If I want to do something like that, it's not going to look right. So we're just going to lower the saturation down just a little bit. But our hue, we can see, is right there at 159, which is what we typed in, because that's the complementary hue for our hat color. All right, guys, let's go ahead and make this invisible and visible again. You can see how nice that is. With the complementary color loaded, now we have the color of the hat, and it's perfect complement coloring the background of the photo. All right. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I know there was kind of a lot. We went through a bunch of dialog boxes and selections and layer masks and all that stuff, but if you get the idea, this is really, really great. So if you want to change your image using complementary colors at your own, just make sure to follow these key steps. First, start off by loading your Adobe Color Themes. Go to Window, down to Extensions, into Adobe Color Themes. Next, you want to use the eyedropper tool to sample the color that you want to use to create an Adobe Color Theme. Now in this case, I changed my point size for the eyedropper to 31 by 31 pixels, and we sampled the hat, giving us that nice reddish brown color as our active color. Then in the Adobe Color Themes, we chose the middle icon right under the color wheel that says Set Selected Color from Active Color. This is going to allow us to use that reddish brown color in our Adobe Color Theme. From here, you have a bunch of different options of color themes. You can choose analogous, monochromatic, triad, and in this case, we're choosing complementary. So when clicking on complementary, it automatically loads the complementary colors that we've chosen. In this case, we've got a great green color. Now that we have our complementary color within our Adobe Color Themes, we need to figure out how to change the background color. Now you can do that in a few different ways. In this case, we did it in two different ways. First, we clicked on that green color, and then we clicked on the leftmost icon that says Click to Set Active Color. And we set that as our active color. Then I went to Layer, down to New Fill Layer, and over to Solid Color, which automatically loaded that green color as our foreground color for our solid fill color layer. The next way we showed you how to do this is by analyzing the numbers that associated with our color. In this case, we used HSB, or Hue Saturation Brightness. So we went up to Layer, down to New Adjustment Layer, and over to Hue Saturation. Click on that Colorize button and then choose the hue from your actual color picker. In this case, it was 159. So we took 159, clicked on Colorize within our Hue Saturation Adjustment layer, and then where our hue slider is, type in 159 and we get the perfect hue. Now that we got a couple of different layers to colorize our image with a complementary color, all we need to do is make sure they only show up on the background. So I created a new layer, went to Select and down to Color Range. We selected out the color of the background. Then I loaded this as a layer mask and inverted it. Held Alt or Option to copy one layer to another one, and now we have two different layers that color the background perfectly. Guys, thanks so much for watching today's episode. I hope you learned a ton. Maybe we showed you a new dialog box you've never seen before. If you love Photoshop as much as I do, go ahead and click on your screen right about now. We'll send you free episodes every single week. And if you have an idea for an episode, or a question or a comment about today's episode, I'd love to hear it. Just leave it in a comment right down below.
Right. Well,
if you understood that, you're better than me.
Mind-boggling.
it's quite straightforward when you. I think you got to watch it back slowly.
Yeah.
About 4 or 5 times, I think.
Yes. Yeah. It's like everything
Something
else.
about colours.
You got a link.
What I'll do is I'll email you the link to the video.
Yeah, it's like
so that if you want to watch it again and go through it slowly, but
yeah, it's like and pause occasionally.
Yes.
He's like a parrot in an oil drum, isn't it?
He actually got faster and faster, I think, as he went through the video.
The other thing is that the Adobe Color theme, the widget that he had in Photoshop CC, you've got the equivalent on a website. So you can, if you don't have that widget, as I don't, I can go to the website as long as I know the color value that I want to find the complementary color to, and I type that value in on that Adobe website, then it gives me the same information.
Yeah.
It's just not so automated. So you might have that link, Peter, for that Adobe site.
Yeah.
If not, I'll try and dig it out if it would be of help.
Yeah, if you could, and just drop that over, and I can put that on the same email then, because it's something. Obviously, he went through it, and he knows what he's doing, and he just whizzes through it and makes it look so straightforward. And we all know what it's like when you sit down and try and do it yourself. Something don't quite go the same, and you then sat there thinking, well, what did he press? But if you've got the video, you can always just play it back. I've done it before where I've played a bit, gone into Photoshop and done that, then gone back and played another bit. And once you do it a few times, you get used to what you're doing, and you know where you are.
Is there not an affinity equivalent, Keith?
Sorry?
Is there not an affinity equivalent?
Well, you can do all of the steps really, but you don't have that widget, I don't think.
Oh, okay.
So that's really telling you what color you're aiming to get, isn't it, in the background? But you can look it up. You know, there are tables. There's an interactive website. We'll tell you what color to choose for your background.
Yeah,
the complementary one. I was going to say that's a fairly specific example, isn't it? Where you're changing the background of white wall to be complementary to a model's hat.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'd be interested to see in other types of picture, really. You know, if you want to do a landscape or something, what would you do?
Yeah.
It's also very convenient that he had a perfectly almost single color background, which is a lot easier to work with than something that's more normal, isn't it?
Mm.
Yeah.
The fact that she only had the white and the red in her clothes too.
Yes. Yeah. He's obviously picked that photo out because it was going to make it easier to explain and present his change of color.
If any of us have ever tried to select a background which is covered with human hair or animal hair for that matter, it ain't quite so straightforward, is it?
No.
Definitely not.
No, we have done that on a couple of occasions before, Colin, haven't we? Tried to show the, and it's you can get there, you can get fairly close, but it is something where you've got to be careful of the subject you're using, I think, to start with, and the background.
Yes. And many of the pieces of software, including Adobe, when they started out with this isolating hair, were very careful to choose black-haired women against the blue sky, and that worked well. But apart from that, it didn't work. And slowly over time, they refined it and improved it. But it's still not an easy thing to do.
No.
It's no accident that when you start using backgrounds for studio photography, it's some sort of puke bright green, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which would never occur in nature or anywhere else for that matter.
No, and part of it is it's done so that you can make it easier to show the selection.
Yeah, sure.
So they're not daft. Problem is, in real life, you don't often
Never that lucky.
No, you've got to really get the background and sort that. Right, okay, well, that's a bit of food for thought for everybody, hopefully, on colour.
Oh yeah.
All might give it a little bit more thought when we're taking a picture.
No, I thought the first video was very good because it showed you options. Normally we focus on the subject.
Good night, Miriam, Dave.
Bye-bye.
Enjoy your break.
Bye.
Yeah,
Bye.
thank you. And take care.
And you.
Nice to see you.
They've gone. Go on, Colin.
Yeah, normally we focus on the subject and then try and position ourselves or whatever is necessary to make sure the subject stands out against the background. But I like the concept of focus on the background and then wait for the subject to appear, because that's something you tend not to do.
Yeah, true enough.
Yeah.
Well, I think you do that in street photography. You focus on the background in certain places when you've got different shadings like black and white and buildings and thing, and then wait for something to come into the subject.
Yeah, but that's an exception, Kerry. I think because you did a fair amount of street photography, you learned about that naturally. But for the average person who's used to taking a subject, then the background becomes a secondary item. And you're working on the subject and then trying to get the background right. Whereas with what you were doing and what this woman showed, certain examples showed they saw something in the background which was graphic and exceptional, and then needed a subject and then waited. It's almost like animal photography, where you find a superb environment and then you wait for an animal to appear in exactly the right position at the right time.
Yeah, 3 days later.
Yeah.
I think it's the same. It's the same basic idea as in street photography, isn't it? The idea is find a great location and stay there until something interesting happens. That's, and this was with a splash of color, but it could equally be something that really complemented the background in a,
Yeah, either that or take up taxidermy, whatever.
Yeah, well, may not be everybody's taste.
And then try and make it look lifelike.
Well, there was, wasn't there? There was
parts
that
and movement
nature,
in it.
There was that nature photography thing. It won a competition with a stuffed anteater in front of an anthill.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, this sort of night shot of an anteater in front of one of those great big huge anthill things, sort of like looked like mountains, and turns out it was stuffed.
I know the feeling.
Yeah. Well, perhaps we could cover that next
Carry
week.
a stuffed animal around with you if you found a good background.
Do you think in front of the anthill it was posed then?
You think so? Yeah, probably.
Yeah, probably. I love it. Oh dear.
Okay. Anybody else got any thoughts on that tonight, on what the colouring videos? Good news is I've got another 46 videos, so we've got plenty to wade our way through.
Calm down, Peter. Calm down.
That's another 3 years, is it, Peter?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it'll keep us going. Gradually work our way through them.
The other thing is, Peter,
I find the club's down to one member.
Yes. It'll be just me.
We're going to impress the hell out of them next week with our Kestrel photographs, aren't we?
Yes. Yeah, we're just going to come on to that. Next week, or let's start. Tomorrow, myself, Dave and Gary are going over to Pete Wilden's bird sanctuary, and we're going to be taking some photos of wild kestrels, hopefully. So we'll report back on that so that I can let everybody know that's interested, and all of those that aren't interested. How are you, John? All right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The next 4 weeks we're just giving over to bird photography, so that John can have 4 weeks off.
So you're in April, May, I should say. Yeah.
No, we'll give you a report back of how it went and what exactly is there and what the opportunities are. And then if anybody's interested, we will be having some more days out there. So,
I think the thing is, though, Peter, we went there, didn't we? And
yeah,
one thing that's completely obvious is his total passion for wild birds.
Yes, yeah.
You know,
but he showed
most
us
of us,
round.
if someone presented us with the opportunity to make £1 million on selling a bit of land, would think twice between owls and selling the land. But he's absolutely adamant. He's just totally committed to the wildlife,
Yeah.
isn't he?
Yes, he very kindly showed us round for about an hour, wasn't it?
Yeah,
and
maybe even more than that.
Probably was a bit longer than that. And there's just so much to see there, and so much that he's doing. It's fascinating, really, and it's all behind his garage where he repairs vehicles. So quite amazing, really.
I was going to say, I asked you in an email, didn't I, Peter?
Yes.
Is it just the kestrel hide or the wild bird hide?
Tomorrow's just the kestrels we're doing. But what we'll do is we'll get a better idea. In all fairness, Terry, he overloaded us with so much information as he showed us round, that part of tomorrow is for us to go through and see what there is there, see the different hides, and then get that information back to everybody, so you got a better idea of what's available and what you can do. Because I wasn't sure myself at the end of it, to be quite honest.
I think the main thing is he's got a combination of genuine wildlife that he encourages to come there by feeding, which is the kestrels and later on the kingfishers. But also he and his son are passionate about preserving wild owls, and that they're one of a small number of registered owl keepers. I didn't realize you had to be specially registered to be even allowed to put them in a cage. And between the wildlife, which of course is opportunistic, is because he feeds it on a regular basis that they actually keep on coming back, and the owls, which they actually control and own and can not perform is the wrong word, but they can actually get them to respond to their control and their command, which makes it easier. He offers a whole range of things. I've absolutely, there's no way in a million years he makes any money out of it. There's no way. It's just not possible.
No, I mean, he was saying he doesn't even know what his food bill is, does he? But it's in the hundreds.
Oh yeah,
a week, you know.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Anyway, we'll report back on that. Also, we'll have a bit of a follow up and do a bit of photoshopping from what we've seen tonight. We'll put something together for that. Then the following week is the PDI, and did we want to do 2 comps, one for wildlife and one for anything else? Everybody okay with that? We'll try that, shall we?
Yeah, well, I have to say, Peter, I was quite completely disappointed. My favourite landscapes was about 99th in the last PDI. So it'd be nice to separate out wildlife.
Yeah, we'll separate out wildlife. And what I think we'll do is you can get your images into me by Friday week. I'll put this in the email that I'll send out later in the week. Get your images into me by Friday week. And then we'll go back to scoring by email, and we'll do the half points again. And I'll put those scores in. And then on the Tuesday night, we'll go through and give us a bit more time to critique them then. We'll do that. And also we'll obviously share the scores. So we'll do that just to make it a little bit different from what we've been doing. Makes it a bit easier on me on the night then, because trying to do the scores and go through them all, it takes up a bit more time. We don't have quite as much time to critique them then. So we'll do that. And then, so that's the 20th. The following week is the 27th, was when we got a supermoon. And I'll have a look at that on the Peels app, because I got a feeling it would be better to go out and take some photos of the moon on the Monday night, because the moon comes up at about 7:30, I think, if I've read the app correctly. I've got to just go through it with Gary and check that I'm reading it properly, because I think on the Tuesday night the moon rises at about 9:40, so that's going to be a bit late. But the previous night, I believe it's coming up at about 7:30, so it's a super moon, so it's an extra certain size larger and brighter than normal. So it might be, if anybody's got anywhere they think would be good to go and take some photos of that.
Yeah, the sun won't have set by 7:30, will it?
No, but it doesn't always. Sometimes the moon's up before the sun's down.
Yeah.
So it might take us another hour to get a nice or a darker picture or darker sky. But we'll have a look at that, and I'll come back to you on that to check whether. I mean, anybody got a problem with going out on the Monday night instead of the Tuesday? Anybody got anything on?
No.
No.
Terribly, although moon's not that exciting, really.
No, well,
It's
well,
always the same,
yeah.
unless you find somewhere to photo it against, maybe.
Yeah, well, that's why I was
Which
saying,
is
does anybody know where to
difficult.
go? You need a bit of a landmark, don't you, to take it against? But anyway, we can get out, or we can get out a bit early and do some sunsets and then do some moon coming up for those that want to do it. Okay.
Back to the PDI, Peter.
Sorry?
Back to the PDI competition.
Yes.
Breaking it down into two.
Yeah.
How many images do we put in for each?
Well, I was just wondering that. What do you think? Because you could put some in each, couldn't we? You don't have to just do.
You could make it a total of 3 for any one person. So you could put 3 in the one in one and 2 in the other.
Yeah. Whereas Colin said 1.5 in each.
But
yeah,
if
we'll
you
do that. A total of 3 over the two.
Yeah.
The two subjects. Yeah. So you could have two wildlife and 1 landscape, or whatever you want to do, really. Sound like a plan?
Does that mean to say the wildlife ones are not to be left rounded as in proper wildlife?
Well, sorry, I was going to mention that. Did you want to strictly follow the wildlife rules, which I can send in the email, which basically means you can crop it and take small blemishes out, sharpen it, and that's about it.
Because then if you want to do everything, you can add them to the other one, the open one.
Well, yeah, that's true. Should we do that? We'll stick to the wildlife rules for the wildlife one.
What are the wildlife rules?
Well, I'd have to check them, but basically you can crop.
No taxidermistry.
Well, no, you say that, Terry, but I don't think that's true. They've never mentioned that. It's more
Probably
what
because
you
nobody
do.
thought of it.
No, it's more what you do with the photo after you've taken it than what's in the photo.
They don't like it up them, as they used to
Yeah.
say on the old television program.
Basically, I think I'll have to check and put it in the email, but I think wildlife is you can crop the picture, you can sharpen it, you can remove dust spots and any small blemishes. That's pretty much it. So you can't remove big chunks. You know, if you've got something in the way of a bird, you can't remove it. You can't move it.
You can't put it on the Statue of Liberty then.
No.
And you're not allowed to use a chainsaw. That's the other.
Yes. Ah, dear. Okay. Right. Well, that's about it, folks. If anybody, unless anybody else has got anything they want to say.
No.
Oh, just one quick one. Barry, where's Barry? Look down there, horizontal.
He's gone to
He's
sleep.
here.
We haven't heard anything from the hall.
No, Colin's already asked the
Oh,
question.
did he? I missed that.
Just keep
No, I said.
I think I was busy trying to get the sound to work. I think trying to
I
work
said I
out how Zoom worked.
I will send him an email.
Yeah.
Find out what's happening.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. All right, everybody.
Okay, guys. See you later.
All okay?
Thanks a lot.
Bye now.
Take
Good night,
care.
all.
Good night, all.
Good night.
Good night.